Here we go. It's going to be a ramble. And I think I'll put this on my Black Pill Gnostic page, which is probably where it belongs. Man, it's just been a week, man, especially with what I call Bowser versus the Black Manosphere. Since she doesn't like her name mentioned, we're just going to call her Bowser. I know the brothers in the Black Manosphere don't like me calling her Bowser is because in Mario Brothers, Bowser is the final boss. But I think since we use it in reference to her so much, I think that's appropriate term to use for her, right? Appropriate name. We'll see what you think. I think it's kind of funny. I think it's the perfect name or the perfect reference to this particular person. I ain't gonna mention her name this time. In fact, unless I'm addressing her directly and responding to her directly, I'm just gonna call her Bowser. Anyway, Bowser versus the internet and the Bowser versus the Black Manosphere in particular, because she never really went after the white manosphere, which is the real so-called patriarchy. That would mean that you really understand what a patriarchy actually is. And a real patriarchy like Japan, like South Korea, like China, like I do believe Singapore. A woman cannot get an abortion without the permission of her partner, of her man. Man has to sign for it. In those countries, women can't really do anything by themselves. Those are real patriarchies. We have what we call a gynocracy in the Black community and a matriarchy in the broader community, which is what the white manosphere has pointed out for years. The gynocratic laws and the gynocratic policies that are implemented in this country by what I call the government or the daddy government, or the other philosophers, it's called the great Leviathan. That was Hobbes. Hobbes called it the Leviathan, basically interfering in personal people's lives and calling balls and strikes and saying what can and cannot be done. So you can't even talk to a woman on the street without the Leviathan coming down on you, which is why most men, Black men especially, really white men especially, Black men still are willing to throw themselves over the cliff for some putang. So Black men still approach. The white guys say, to hell with it, the juice is not worth the squeeze, which is why those articles written. But I'm just want to say a few things about this with the stuff that's going on with Obsidian. And the article is probably getting ready to come out pretty soon by Danielle Bell, going after the so-called pick-me sphere that is tangential to the Black manosphere. Now, they never really go after the white folks. They never really go after the white men because the white men sign their checks. And ultimately, just like Bell Hooks tried, Bell Hooks wanted, their ultimate goal was to be the wife of a white man. It's the ultimate goal. Feminists don't want to say that, but that's their ultimate goal because he's at the top of the list. The thing is, they don't want to get rejected by white men or used by white men. So that's why they tend to avoid them in most cases and tend to stay in their lane, which is Black men. But I've been listening to this stuff, and usually I don't pay attention to this stuff because Black feminists are probably the silliest, most idiotic people on the planet. They use made-up words, lots of made-up words, in it's almost unintelligible combinations that you have to look at it 3 or 4 times and break it up and then figure out what they're trying to say. And then they redefine words. I come to the bottom line. All it is by getting the best price for their poontang. That's all it is. That's all it is. All these feminists going after After Jonathan Owens and Simone Biles, we know doggone well Simone Biles, on her own, without her money, without her fame, would not have gotten the Jonathan Owens. She wouldn't have. She acquired the Jonathan Owens. Nobody says anything about Stedman and Oprah because they know that Oprah bought Stedman. Straight up. Had nothing to do with accomplishments. Women buy guys all the time. But black women don't want to admit it is because their ego will not allow it. Black women have the biggest egos on the planet. They think black men have egos and pride. Not even close to what black women have. Not even close. But you would think that the most educated, supposedly, group of black women on the planet, supposedly, would do something other than gender politics. What they call gender politics, which is sex politics. I don't even like using the word gender because after sourcing through the differences and sourcing through the material and sourcing through the definitions, sex is real. They still use sex. There are sexual differences. It's sex politics. Gender is performative. That's why you can be anything that you want. That's where trans people and gay people come in. It's performative. It's all about the display. Because as their white sisters have taught them, that nurture trumps nature until it doesn't. And what they're saying is that nurture does not trump nature. Nature will still pop its ugly head up and ruin whatever plans that they had. And what they're finding out is that they really don't want to be men. What they're finding out is they really don't want to be as independent as they thought they did. What they found out is they really want a husband and family and that comfortable life that they work so hard for. Shout out to them. And what they really want is the same thing that the lower class women want, even though they don't recognize class, which is, I'm not going to cuss here, bunk, as Obsidian would say. It's bunk. And they know it's bunk. And we actually read their literature, you can see that it's bunk. Like I was reading Dr. Danielle Bell's thing on Pick Me. And I was looking for her other writings. And this, I think she wrote a book, an autobiographical book about, I think it was her grandfather, if I'm not mistaken. That's the only other thing I could find on her. And she writes this paper. And it's like 15 pages, so there must have been a word count, minimum word count that she had to have, right? Because as I'm reading it, it's repetitive. It doesn't get to the point. It doesn't really define all the terms that she meant, that she puts out there. And what it really reminds me of is a typical college paper that you need for a grade. Very wordy, a lot of filler words, a lot of filler definitions, a lot of repetitive points that she repeats and themes that she repeats over and over and over again. And after reading through it, I'm like, who wrote this stuff? I said, who wrote this paper, man? Because it's like trying to clean up one of my daughter's papers. He tried to make sense out of it. I wish I could actually go back to her research and rewrite her paper. God, it's like, sometimes you read some of these women's papers and you actually want to go back to it and rewrite it. I could actually, if you give me the research, I can actually write a better paper for you. Now, I guess I'm an intellectual snob in that way. Much like Toya is a grammar Nazi, I'm probably an intellectual Nazi. Like some of this stuff that they put out actually irritates me. Anyway, getting back to the point. This is not about them opening up their options. This is not about changing the black community. This is not about doing better and making people within the black community, even black women, better. All it is about getting a better sexual position in the black community and deriving or extracting more resources, emotional, financial, physical, from black men and to pay the least. This is basically arbitrage. They're trying to talk down the contributions of black men and make what they contribute worth less and make what little they put out worth more. Like a black woman's degrees that they've had for the last 40, 50 years don't mean anything unless it translates to two things. One, you make more money, make more wealth for your family and your community. Or two, what it was originally intended for is actually to educate better children, neither of which have happened. So that's why men, black men especially, say, to me, your degree is worthless. In fact, your degree is actually an impediment to my happiness. As I've explained in my Octane series, 92s are difficult to deal with because guess what? They're always aspiring to do something. They're always aspiring to try to do better, which means they're pushing you to earn more money for them. So when you actually marry a quote unquote educated, degreed woman, you're basically hiring your own boss. So whatever work that you have on the outside that's pressured and it with deadlines and stuff like that, guess what happens when you get back home? Pressured, more deadlines. I mean, you got to earn more money, you got to earn more status, you got to look good in front of her peers. Basically, you have a house that she can show off to her peers and look good and raise her status. And that's the constant pressure on both sides, which is why a lot of guys get off the bus with an educated female. Even my educated subs that are degreed don't particularly like educated females, especially educated black females, just because of that, because it's always a battle. It's always a push-pull. It's always a competition, especially in the area of what we call the social media era, right? Why? Because every picture she sees, every post she sees, every TikTok, every Instagram, every Facebook, every Twitter feed that she sees with a picture of some woman doing better than she is and living a lifestyle and experience that she hasn't lived, then there's pressure on her, especially pressure on you to give her that. And it's constant, which is why so many black women, especially degreed black women, are single. Noted on the platform with Abby K. Williams and three others. They're all 40 years old and single. Why? Nobody wants that headache. Now, if these women were actually making said husband and said partners, which is something I hate, better people, I would have no problem with it. If they were happier, wealthier, more well-rounded, and they loved their marriage and their family and stuff like that, and there wasn't this constant drumbeat of pressure on their head, I think most black men will sign up for that, including the so-called upscale black men. They would have no problem with it. But guess what? That is not happening. And I don't care how aspirational these so-called feminists are trying to paint a picture of this particular environment, it doesn't work out. It doesn't pan out. And that's the problem. You can try to sell it. You can try to spin it any way you want to. At the end of the day, what has been the experiment that has gone on for the last 50 years, for the most part, does not work. For the most part, after 50 years of promises that it's going to be good for everybody, it is not. At the end of the day, the feminism, it won't be men that bring feminism down, it'll be women. And that's why they're after the pick-me's. I was reading Dr. Bell's paper, and I'm going to do I'm going to read the whole thing in a video. And we're going to go through it piece by piece, go through it line by line, because first thing they're going to say is you didn't read the whole thing and you misrepresenting what she said and what she called a tactical patriarchal femininity for a woman to get a better outcome and a better life, and that it was dangerous, kept saying it was dangerous. You get a softer life, you get a better partner, you get options of staying home with your children, you get protection, you get resources, you get love, you get acceptance, all this kind of stuff that women tend to like. but you have to trade in your so-called independence at the door. You have to trade in your your independent stance at the door. In other words, you have to be cooperative and submissive. And that's a no-no for her. In other words, you should be independent. You have somebody taking care of you and your children. You have somebody working 40, 50, 60 hours a week to take care of you and your children. The least you can do is be agreeable. Basically, this because the Asians don't talk about submission; they talk about agreeable. Are you agreeing to my stance? Are you agreeing to the precepts that I put down? If you're not agreeable, then basically what an Asian man will do is get rid of her because she's disagreeable. Black women were never submissive, even the ones that were married. I know. I grew up in one of those families. My mother's not submissive. She never has been. My aunt is not. None of my aunts are submissive. They never have been. My grandmother was never submissive. She never was. She's married twice. My cousin, who's my age, is married 3 times. Not submissive. None of my female cousins are submissive. My sisters are not submissive. The nicest black females I know that are married, happily married, are not submissive. They're agreeable. Now, I'm going to go over this, but I'm going to touch on it here. Tactical patriarchal femininity is a no-no. Being a pick-me is a no-no. But being a single mother in poverty is preferable. Or being a single mother, even if you have money and struggling without a parent, without a husband and a father to your child, is preferable. And then none of the stats over the past 60 years are true. None of them about single parent households and all the destruction and psychological damage it does to not only boys, but also the girls. Now that research means anything because guess what? I don't care how intellectual these women sound, it's feeling. Even Bowser, most of that stuff is crap. All it is sexual politicking. How can I get the best value for my assets that I can from black men? All it is the dating market arbitrage, which the Manosphere was never really about. It's not a dating market arbitrage. I was a MGTOW for like from 2012 to 2015. I was a MGTOW in the white, what we call the broader or the white Manosphere. It was never about sexual politics. It's about getting a fair deal in this society as a man. Because at some point, this society, all society, I'm not just this one, all societies want you to come together, get with a woman, produce children for the next generation. Ultimately, I don't care how far you go back, I don't care what they say about it. All biological entities, they have one job. They have one job. Well, they're really 2 jobs: to survive and reproduce. That's it. We layer all these other things on top of it to actually be able to do that easier and more effectively. And with, 8 billion people on the planet, we have done that. Ultimately, your job as a man, as a woman, is to do 2 things: survive and reproduce. That's it. Be fruitful, which is to be thriving, and multiply. At the basis of all species, I don't care what it is, any species that wants to continue to be a species will do those 2 things. All the other stuff is bunk. I'm not going to cuss on this one. I'll cuss on the next one, but not this one. And when you look at racial hypergamy, as Dr. Green Gorilla has coined it, so aptly and so brilliantly, all it is sexual arbitrage, trying to get the best deal for my assets. Same thing with the men, trying to get the best deal for my assets. It's really all this is. This is not about world peace, as they try to claim, because they always try to say about capitalism or late stage capitalism. Feminism, second wave feminism is, and coincides with neoliberalism. Second wave is the daughter, is the daughter of neoliberalism. Look at when neoliberalism actually came about in 1971 and the laws that came about right after that. That's nothing but second wave feminism. The women that do this are not socialists. They're not communists. They're not Marxists. Marxism as an idea still exists, but Marxism as a reality doesn't exist on the planet. There's no place that practices Marxism. None. There are no countries that practice Marxism. So them trying to preach an idea that they have no conception of makes no sense. That's number one. Number two, these women don't really care about racism because they don't talk about racism. If they talked about racism, they wouldn't be talking about black men. They use racism as an excuse. They throw it in as a buzzword. They don't even explain what their stance is, how racism is actually included in their argument. They just throw it out there. Capitalism, racism, sexism, misogynoir means of misogyny against black women. And then they bristle when you call them misandrous. Even though the hatred against black men by the broader society in them is visceral. You don't have to look for academics do it all the time, right? BLM was full of it, full of misandrous quotes and connotations and stuff like that, full of it. Black female academic is full of misandry. And when we talk about misandry, we talk about low-level contempt and hatred of their men. It's obvious. They hate being with us. They hate being tied to us. But the thing is, what they hate is they have no place to go. They don't. And they've tried it. The limited number of women going over to Nigeria and getting husbands. Why Nigeria? People have to answer that. Why black women go to Nigeria to get married? Because that's the only place on the planet where they really can actually go find husbands outside the United States. So maybe the UK. Really, they can't even go to the UK and get married. Black American women are not really wanted in the UK because they're even worse than the Brits. The only real place that they can actually exist in pairing is the United States. And they can't even do that right. What is it? 73% of black women are unmarried. The average black marriage lasts 5 years. Black women have the highest divorce rate of any grouping. Not even close. Black women's stats are all upside down. It's not even close. Black feminism, black intersectional feminism has failed black women unless this is your desired effect. That you want to be single mothers. You want what they call all-girl families. You don't want to be tied to a man. You made that obvious. And what the Black Manosphere is trying to tell black men is they don't want you like that. Now, if you're willing to put up with the stuff you have to put up with in the modern black woman, then go ahead. What we're saying is if you're going to do that, extract some kind of benefit from it. But if you don't want to do that, God bless you. That's all we're saying. That's why the passport bro movement came out of the Black Manosphere. It was started. It was announced. It was out there. It didn't really take effect until the post-COVID when the environment opened up and allowed remote work and other ways of making money outside of the United States. That's when it exploded. But our so-called intellectual class of black women are too stupid to figure that out. Some people, like Bowser with a Harvard degree, are too stupid to figure that out. My spiritual teacher called it compound ignorance. Simple ignorance is when you just don't know and you can't figure it out. Compound ignorance is when you're too stupid to figure it out and you just don't know, but you think that you do. And you thinking that you do and you know it, and when you don't, is what blocks you. Compound ignorance is the worst form of ignorance on the planet. Unfortunately, it's not just limited to black women. They double down on stupid and do dumb stuff. And all it really loops back is to, I want a better price for my vagina. That's it. That's it. That's all it is. I want a better price. I want more resources. I want more status in exchange for what? Me. I don't want to provide any value. I don't want to provide anything other. I just want to extract as much wealth and from black men, white men, if I can get them, as I can. That's it. That's all the argument is about. That's all it's ever about. And when they can't get it, when they can't negotiate it, and they fail, then it's your fault. Then it's Jermaine's fault because you were inadequate. So, and with the little bitty chump change that you got is not enough because they think they can actually control the market. They think they can dictate the market and actually get something that's not there, or shame men into providing something that they don't want to provide. And guess what men are saying? You didn't ask us what we wanted. You want us to buy you and not give us what we want. And men are slowly but surely saying is, what you're selling is not worth what I'm paying. In fact, it's what you're selling is not what I want at any price, to the point where black women cannot even give it away anymore. That's what's happening with guys retreating, with guys saying, I'd rather be a virgin, or guys said, I'd rather go monk. It's because you're not selling anything that anybody wants. White guys are not coming down, beating down your door to get you. 73% of you guys are single, without a husband. There's plenty to go around. 61% of young men have not, under 30, have not even had a date in the past couple of years. A date. They don't approach anymore. White women are complaining about it. There's plenty of men to go around. What sits on the shelf, unbothered, that's so valuable, to where 70% of it is unbought? You tell me. But this is a success story. This is something that's supposed to be preferred. Really. Anyhow, man, that's my ramble. Probably doesn't make sense, but that's all this stuff is, man. I'm listening to Bowser. I'm listening to all these feminists. I'm listening to stuff these women go at the pick-me's. Really, all it is with the pick-me's, man, women are getting ready to jump ship, and they know it. That's all it is. They're getting ready to jump ship. They try to keep these women on the farm and hold the line. Stay on the shelf, girl. Just wait. They're going to give up any minute, and we're going to get what we want. 40 years later, just gets worse. Anyway, that's all I got. Be just out, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.